What is going on YouTube? Gabons here and welcome to the 44th episode of the Tech Pills bi-weekly live stream. So let's jump right to the first news of today. Ubuntu 21.04 beta is out. Let's see what's new. And by the way, if you were wondering, this is the title of the Wayland is the Future, or the Future is Wayland title of the video. So if you were wondering, that's it. So Ubuntu 21.04 Hirsute Hippo is coming soon. We're in April, and the stable version will be released anytime at this point, I think by the end of the month. But the beta version is out already, so we can have a look at what's new with this release. To be honest, it's not much of a big release, since it's kind of a polish release, but we still have some things that we can look forward to. First of all, it does not include the latest GNOME 40, which is kind of a shame, but it does make sense if you think about it, because it just only came out recently, and Ubuntu has its own extensions and themes and downstream patches that they need to apply on top of stock GNOME to make it the Ubuntu desktop. And it makes sense that they still need some time to work on these things. But it does include some GNOME 40 apps if you're curious to try them out. For example, System Monitor, Disk Usage Analyzer, also known as Baobab, and GNOME Web, also known as Epiphany, which, by the way, is not installed by default, but it's available for install in the repository. These have been updated to the version corresponding to GNOME 40. So if you want to try out some new GNOME 40 apps, I'm pretty sure these are not GTK 4, they're still GTK 3, but still they have some improvements and some changes that you may want to look at. Of course, if you're interested in trying more bleeding edge GNOME software and GNOME apps in general, you can always use something like Flatpak and install them that way, and that's really what I suggest you to do, since it's probably the best way to get GNOME apps at this point. The other big important change in Hirsuit is that it will ship with Wayland by default, and this is a big deal. This is huge, as Ubuntu is, like it or not, it's the leading Linux desktop distribution for most people, and it's what most people come in contact with, like, for their first Linux experience. Now, on the one hand, I'm excited because I know how nice Wayland is compared to Xorg, and I expect that Wayland would get lots of improvements since more people are going to use it. On the other hand, I'm kind of worried that this will go nowhere because Wayland still has some issues here and there. It's not like 100% there yet, as we've talked about many times in the show. This is one of my pet peeves, actually. I really like Wayland, but there are some things that just don't work in Wayland compared to Xorg. One of like the biggest issues is VR, and yeah, I have VR. I have a VR headset. If you follow me on Mastodon, you probably know that. I am planning to release a video about my experience with VR, but VR doesn't work on Wayland because it needs something that's called DRM leasing, and that's DRM as like there are two DRMs in the technology world. DRM meaning digital right management. That's the thing that you typically have with Netflix and stuff for like protecting copyrighted material, and then there's DRM in the sense of something related to graphics. They're not related, same acronym, not related technologies. But anyway, for VR you need something that's called DRM leasing, and that's not available in Wayland. So this is one thing in particular that still doesn't work, as well as screen sharing is mostly there, but it's still not 100% as far as all applications out there go. So your mileage with Wayland may vary, and one of the reasons why they probably decided to ship Wayland again by default, because this isn't the first time Ubuntu has done this. I think it was 17.10 that released with Wayland by default, and of course it had some problems because it was still pre-early 2017. Now we're in 2021, so it's been what 18, 19, 20, 21. It's been almost four full years since that experiment. So they're going to try again, but this time we still have those problems I talked about, but it looks like things are aligning this time a little bit better. As for Wayland support, one of the biggest offenders for wider Wayland adoption, NVIDIA, is apparently working on improving Wayland support with new features like accelerated X-Wayland and patches to Mesa that will allow loading alternative GBM backends, which, for what I understand, will allow the standard Mesa backend for Wayland to just work with the NVIDIA proprietary driver. And this is huge because it means that if everything goes well, and if they don't F up halfway as they typically do, this could mean that Wayland will be finally usable and with proper good performance on NVIDIA GPUs with proprietary drivers, which is it's one of the biggest blockers right now for again for wider Wayland adoption. Another big news on the Wayland support is with OBS, and this is particularly important for me since I do live streams, as you can probably tell, using OBS. Thanks to the work of GNOME developer George Stavrakas, I hope I pronounced that right, new patches have been recently merged in OBS and will be included in the next release of OBS to allow it to be to be rendered as a proper Wayland client, and also to support screen sharing or screen capture and window capture directly with Wayland via the Pipewire backend. And if you don't know, Pipewire doesn't just do audio, it also manages video, and as a matter of fact, it's the component of most desktops out there, including GNOME, and I'm pretty sure Sway also uses Pipewire for screen sharing. And yeah, it allows screen capture and managing like screen capture applications so they can ask for permission to grab a certain window or a certain desktop and record it in some way, shape, or form. And as a matter of fact, I am streaming this from OBS, from GNOME Wayland, with these latest patches, and yeah, I mean, it's running great. I'm not capturing any windows, but I've tried that before starting the show, and it seems to work well. It was somewhat supported previously with some plugins for OBS, but it wasn't perfect as frame rate starts dropping after a while, after you record for a while with Pipewire window capture, to the point that it just stops and you just see like a static window instead of a live capture. So that apparently has been fixed. So I'm pretty excited to live a more well-enriched life, I guess. Anyway, what I wanted to say is things are really aligning this time. We're seeing lots of work for better Wayland support across the board. So let's see where this goes. Let's see once 21.04 actually releases and people actually start using it. Let's see where that goes and what people think about it. Because if this experiment goes well, we could potentially see the next LTS of Ubuntu shipping with Wayland. That would be really something we've actually never seen before. And it would mean that Xorg is practically finally dead. And I mean Xorg is kind of dead already. It's a legacy technology that's still around because of old applications and old technologies that are still trying to move forward, like for instance NVIDIA. But to be fair, yeah, they're working on it. So probably I hope that this works out well and that everything goes smoothly by the next version of Ubuntu. Anyway, let's move on to the next news of today. So I've been trying GNOME 40 for 2 weeks, and I wanted to tell you about my experience. Since the last episode 2 weeks ago, I've gone from using GNOME 40 from the AUR, then from the GNOME Unstable repo, and now it's in staging, which only means one thing: it's coming. And I've told my friends to not update for a while, my friends that use Arch, to not update for a while because things are a little bit broken. I mean, they are not as broken as they used to be 2 weeks ago, but it's kind of not 100% ready, at least if you use certain extensions and stuff that you actually need. So the extension situation, it actually has improved quite a bit. Thanks to the work of Evan Welsh, Dash2Dock, which is the extension that I absolutely need on my desktop, has been, well, it is being ported to GNOME 40. If you're interested, you can install it manually, like the latest development version. You just have to clone Evan's fork of Dash2Dock, check out the GNOME 40 branch, and run make install. You can find this pull request at github.com/micheleg, MICHELEG /dash dash dash. Can I say dash dash? You know what? I'm just gonna copy this in the chat. So you just go to this pull request I just linked in the chat. So it's pull request 1402, and you have a look at events fork, and you just install it that way. So this is still a pull request, and many things aren't working at this point. But if you're just interested in having a dock of some form in GNOME, then this is already pretty much complete. I have it working on my system. I have it configured pretty much very close to how I had it in GNOME 3.38. So I have the dock on the bottom on both monitors, and it's always on auto hide. So if I need it, I just bring the mouse on the bottom of the screen, and it looks good. It looks like the dock in GNOME 40, the dash in GNOME 40. So it's floating. It has these very round corners. You may like it, you may not. It is what it is. They're trying to bring back the customization options that you had typically with Dash to Dock. So I guess you can just wait for that to be ported over. In the meantime, if you're dying to try GNOME 40, you can use this fork of Dash to Dock. It works pretty much fine. Another big extension that I always use is GS Connect, which is a replacement or a re-implementation of KDE Connect that uses the same protocol, but it's built for GNOME Shell, and most importantly, it works fine with Wayland. GS Connect has also recently been ported over, and this port is official, so everything works pretty much as well as it used to. The app indicator support extension fortunately never broke, and finally the other extension that I really suggest you to try is Just Perfection, which is a very small extension that does allow you to do some tweaks to the way that GNOME Shell looks and works, and I personally mainly use it to tweak the size of the workspace preview in the overview. But it also allows quite a bit of customization, like hiding certain components and making other things behave differently. So I really suggest you to check it out if you're running GNOME 40, but also if you're running 3.38. It does different things, but it's also available for 3.38. As of right now, I have everything that I need in GNOME 40, and that feels really good. It hasn't been very long since GNOME 40 release for these extensions, for the extensions that I use to catch up. So that's pretty great. A couple of notes on design and usability. As I suspected, the gray everywhere doesn't really work too well. It's just a bit boring if you ask me. There are a couple of custom themes already out there, so you can change the gray to other colors like Yaru Remix and Flat Remix. But in my opinion, an image or a texture would really work better here. About custom themes, to my knowledge, at this point, there are really no themes that support GTK4. So if you're looking for a shell theme for GNOME 40, as I said, at this point we have Yaru Remix and Flat Remix, and that's it as far as I know. But apparently it's not too difficult to make themes for GNOME Shell 40. As for GTK4 themes, I think that it will take a while because GTK4 structurally is quite different from GTK3, and although there are alternative themes, they're really nothing too crazy. You have the classic Adwaita, you have Adwaita Dark, which is clearly based on the dark variant of Adwaita. And then there's the high contrast theme, of course, and finally the Breeze theme of all themes does support GTK4, which is quite impressive. So if you're running a Plasma or KDE or Qt based desktop environment and you're using the Breeze theme, you can just use it on GTK4 as well, which is pretty good. I mean, the fact that we don't have quite the variety of GTK4 themes at this point, it's kind of a shame, and I hope they will come soon because as a matter of fact, the fact that GTK4 is structurally different from GTK3 allows for some things that were previously really not possible. So I think that this gives theme designers the possibility and the chance to make something really unique and different. And to be honest, I've been using Adwaita for so long that I wouldn't really mind switching it up for something else, even if just for a little bit. As for the switch to an horizontal layout for workspaces, I think that it has quickly grown on me. I don't really notice it. I don't really notice it anymore that much. I still find myself just using one workspace most of the time, and that's probably because of the fact that I have two big monitors, and I think I really have all the space that I need right in front of me without using workspaces. But if I were using a laptop, I think I would use them a lot more. It's just that thanks to human malware, I haven't used the laptop in quite some time, so that's probably part of the reason. Overall, I think that this update went a lot smoother than I anticipated, particularly if you compare it to how bad the switch from GNOME 2 to 3 went. I think that the way GNOME works right now is just good. It works. The paradigm of the desktop, it makes sense, and there's probably no reason to change it up too much. And as we've seen with this latest release, it's possible and plausible to make big changes to the shell without making too much of a mess, unlike what happened with GNOME 2 and GNOME 3. The biggest problem right now is with extensions, as like a bigger problem that transcends this release only, because there is still no stable API for extensions, and relying on developers to port them for each release isn't a viable solution in the long run. And people get burned out, people get bored by this, by having to continuously change the way that they're doing things because the target keeps moving. Hopefully this will be the last release for a while that breaks extensions in a significant way, and I have good reasons to believe it. In fact, as GNOME developers actually acknowledged this problem and are actively working on documentation and continuous integration tools to make the life of extension developers a lot easier. So let's see where that goes. I think that the real proof will be with GNOME 41, and I expected 40 to break a lot of extensions. So let's see what happens with the next release. All right, moving on to the next news of today. I wanted to give you some updates on my apps and the new stuff that's coming. So if you follow me for my development work, so yeah, apart from this YouTube channel, I am also a developer. You may know that I've been quiet for some time. I took a bit of a break from my projects because of university finals and other stuff that kept eating most of my energy. And fortunately, I finally found myself with a little bit more time again, and I've been able to get back to my beloved apps. So let's quickly see what's new and what's to come. Let's start with WhatIP. WhatIP is a little network information tool, useful to get your IP, as the name implies, and have a look at open ports in your system, as well as discovering devices in the LAN. This is one of the simpler apps that I develop, at least as far as the UI complexity goes. And yesterday I was able to check the latest changes with GTK4 and release the version 1.0. So this isn't really too much to look at. If you know WhatIP, it's basically the same app, nothing major changed. The reason for the major version change is that I merged the update to GTK4. So this is officially my first GTK4 app that I can call stable, which is pretty exciting. I was actually, I think, one of the first people to port a Python app to GTK4, even before the API got stable, which was quite fun and frustrating, not just for me, but for all the people that I nagged with my questions and with my whining because things weren't working. But it's been a fun process, and unfortunately I wasn't able to release the GTK4 updates for my apps when I wanted to, because ideally I wanted to release them along with GNOME 40, but unfortunately, life got in the way, and they're a little bit late, but it really doesn't matter. Next up, is Hydra Paper. Hydra Paper is a wallpaper manager mainly targeting GNOME that allows you to set different wallpapers for each monitor. Yes, GNOME doesn't natively support this feature, and so do other desktop environments that are based around the same technologies, like Mate and Budgie, I think, doesn't support this either. Anyway, Hydra Paper is also nearing a new release. It too has received the GTK4 treatment, and fortunately that went pretty well. Another big change, though, that I introduced that I'm going to introduce with the new release is the fact that I'm not using the G settings API anymore. Instead, I am now using the G settings command directly. Let's jump to your chat real quick. Live Leaky says, "Ciao da Brasile." Hi there. Thanks for joining. It's nice to see people from all around the world. I mean, I'm Italian and I'm doing like an English show. It's quite funny. We're all a big community, all scattered across the world, which is something I find amusing all the time. It's great to see this kind of participation from everywhere. You're basically from the other side of the world. You're watching me live. This is just great. Anyway, let's move on. So as I was saying, I'm now using the G settings command directly from inside my application. So it's basically like I'm running a terminal command inside of the application. And this is a very bad practice, and I know it is, but I had to do it because apparently using the G settings API from inside Flatpak doesn't allow me to change certain values, namely the ones required for changing the wallpaper. And this problem actually, I discovered it quite a while ago because many people, when I updated Hydra Paper to support, to use the GNOME 3.38 runtime, many people were complaining that suddenly it just stopped working. As it turns out, it's just a matter of they removed this possibility. They removed this feature. I don't know if there is a better solution. To be honest, I don't really remember why they removed it in the first place. Possibly it has to do with the fact that Flatpak applications don't really need to change your desktop settings. Maybe that's a little bit narrow-minded, but anyway, if you know of a better solution, please don't hesitate to let me know, as I'm always looking for ways to improve. Anyway, this is there. On one hand, it's a very, very bad practice, but on the other hand, it solves lots of issues, and it makes my life and your life a lot easier with this simple application. It's really weird that something as simple as changing a wallpaper can become so problematic. Anyway, the biggest change is that now Hydra Paper comes with a daemon. I've been reluctant in the past to adding a daemon to Hydra Paper, as I didn't really feel like it was necessary, but as it turns out, it is. So what does this daemon allow you to do? So first of all, a daemon is a process that's always active in the background. So just so you know. And if you don't like this, there is an option to disable it. So if you don't like having things running in the background, just disable it. It's fine. So having a daemon allows me to do a couple of nice things. One, if your monitor configuration changes, say if you have a laptop and you plug and unplug monitors all the time, like you go to work and plug a monitor, go back home, you don't have the monitor that you have at work anymore. The wallpaper will now no longer deform and stretch in weird ways. This was one of the biggest problems with Hydra Paper, and one that I'm really happy I was able to fix with just introducing a daemon that now listens to changes in the monitor configuration and reacts accordingly, resetting the wallpaper or wallpapers automatically. And number two, the second thing that it allows is that Hydra Paper now has a built-in slideshow mode. With slideshow mode, you can now have different rotating wallpapers that change automatically every 30 seconds, or of course you can customize how frequently you want them to change. This is one other very requested feature. Really happy I was able to introduce this one. It was more problematic than I thought because I had to make it work in such a way that it didn't interfere with the monitor configuration change. So I'm really glad that I did both of these changes at the same time, because they don't really seem related, but as it turns out they are, because they both change the wallpaper automatically and they need to interact with each other. These changes are all already there in the GTK4 branch, and once I'm sure that everything looks good and works well, I will push them to the master branch and release an update. I can't stress enough how big these changes are, and if you're feeling adventurous and want to help, feel free to install the latest development snapshot and test these new features out, and let me know if you find any bugs. Anyway, the other apps that I'm planning to release new updates for are Feeds and Jara. I do have work in progress for Jara to be ported to GK4, and it's really almost there. Much of the work that I've done prior to my hiatus, let's call it that, for GTK4 was based on and around Jara. So I need to update a couple of things and make sure that everything looks good, and then I'm pretty sure that I can release that as well. As far as feeds go, I need to start the porting for that app because when I first initially looked at it, I couldn't really start the port because of the fact that I needed WebKit GTK to be compatible with GTK4, and when I started looking at that, it wasn't compatible. So I think that now it is compatible because Epiphany, like the new Epiphany, should be based on GTK4. I could be wrong on that, but let's see. I still have to look into that, but all things are aligning pretty well for me to do this work. All right, let's move on to the latest news of today, and the most interesting one in my opinion. Arch Linux gets an official installer. This is crazy. Arch has had installers in the past, but this is really big news because it hasn't had an official installer for a very long time. And as it turns out, yesterday, April 1st, it was announced with a 3-row blog post that the new Arch Linux ISOs will ship with a guided installer called Arch Install. And I was sure this was an April Fool's joke. I was sure, but as it turns out, it isn't. This is real. This is not a joke. This is not an April Fool's. Arch Linux does have an installer now. It's not a graphical installer, and you still need to know what you're doing, but it's a lot simpler and a lot faster to make an Arch install now. This new installer is written in Python and allows you to quickly make an Arch Linux install with a simple choice-based terminal interface. It's really as simple as it can get, and I've tried it like a couple of hours ago, and it's really easy to use and very fast. It allows you to choose a desktop environment, to choose if you want to create an encrypted system with locks, which is great because many people that use Arch don't really bother with encrypting their system because it takes extra steps and can get messy if you don't really know what you're doing. So having this option in the installer, it's just great. And it also allows you to choose the file system you want to use, as well as, I already said, the desktop environment if you want to have a password for the root user, and if you want your non-root user to be allowed to use sudo. Again, pretty great stuff. One other really awesome thing is that this new installer can actually be customized. By writing a simple Python script, you can extend the existing installer and create your own installer based on Arch install to better suit your needs. Let's jump to the chat. Again, Live Leaky says, just as I'm now able to install Arch without looking up the wiki, It really doesn't matter if you think about it, because one of the reasons why you would want to install Arch is because you want to do your own installation. Yeah, sure, if you need like to install something quickly in a pinch, it's useful to have the installer. But I think that if I'm going to make a new install for myself, for me to actually use it, I'm still going to use like the manual process, because that's the way I'm used to installing Arch, and besides, I make many customizations to stock Arch, and I make them at the install time because it doesn't really make sense to do them after the installation is done. So I'm going to still use the manual process, but the fact that Arch install can be extended makes me really want to look at it better, and probably make my own installer with my tweaks and my changes, which is really something great, something that I always wanted to do, but I never really had the time to, because it's when you're doing an install, you have to factor in so many things, and it's one of those things that it's not really difficult to do, because making an installer, particularly for Arch, for Arch that's so well documented, particularly in the installation process, it's not difficult to make an installer. But if you wanted to make a good installer, you need to factor in so many things that it's kind of one of those tedious things that you always want to do but never do, you know. I'm really happy about this, and the implications of it are really something. I have no words. It's just great. I love this thing. I love the fact that they made this. First of all, I love the fact that they made this with Python, because I love Python. Let's just be clear about that. It's a language that I use every day. For everything I use Python. And they really made it well. They implemented features in this installer that make extending it so much easier and more Pythonic, so that if you are a Python developer, if you look at the example code, you just look at it and say it makes sense. It's how I would imagine it to work, because there are certain things, of course, every language has its own particular specific ways of doing things, and Python has many particular things that, if they're implemented correctly, they really make developers' life a lot easier. So I'm really happy that they did it, and they did it well, because this is just really something I wouldn't have imagined that they would have done something like this in such a good and nice and polished way, and it's just released. Actually the Arch install project has been going for quite a while, so probably it just got merged like in the official ISOs. That's really the big news here, but I never really heard of it before, so great stuff. It also makes the barrier to entry for installing Arch a lot lower, if you think about it, without making it too low. So yeah, it's as simple as it can get if you still want it to be Arch. But it's a huge step forward, because again, lowering the barrier to entry means that more people can use it. And not only that, but there's people out there that know perfectly how to install Arch and have the necessary competence to do it, but will just not do it because they don't have the time, or they don't enjoy doing it, or they don't really care. And those are the kind of people that either install Fedora or Ubuntu or some other system because they just don't really care about having that much control. This installer is just perfect. You make a couple of choices, you put in your password, choose the desktop environment you want to use, and you're practically good to go. Can't just stress this enough. Really happy to see this new installer here. I'm really looking forward to working with it and playing around with it and seeing what I can do. Alright guys, this is gonna wrap it up for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you like this video, please make sure to press the thumbs up button down there, and also remember to subscribe to my channel if you want more of this. Also remember to join the TechPills community at techpills.technology/community, or using one of these little handy QR codes on the left side of the screen. You can join the TechPills group, the TechPills channel, if you don't want to chat, if you just want alerts, or you can join the Discord server, although I don't really recommend using Discord anymore. Or again, you can join the Matrix room, which is the preferred way to stay in contact with the TechPills community. And no matter what you choose, you will still be able to talk to everyone in the TechPills community, because the Telegram room, the Telegram group, the Discord server, and the Matrix room are all bridged together thanks to Matrix. So you can join whatever you want, and you will still be able to get the same conversations going. So again, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I'll be seeing you in the next one.